I'm a multi-trade. Except for my day job of heading the School of Computing Engineering and Maths, I'm actually also leading this research group in knowledge engineering, in the University of Brighton. Now, I'll speak very briefly about, give you a bit of an overview. I'll need to actually give you the perspective of where we come from and what's this expertise that I'm trying to actually kind of the experience I'm trying to actually relate to you. I want to talk a little bit, analyze the word big data, because what does it mean? It means a number of different things. And different people talk sometimes for cross purposes, but altogether it is the confluence of a number of very important changes. Some of them are actually revolutionary changes and opportunities that we have now that we didn't have 10 or 20 years ago. I'll give you some example research industrial applied projects. I have here a number more than you need really, but because we will actually make the notes available online, I'd like you to give you some more information. I just want to give you some examples of projects that we've been involved in, more really to look at the variety of things that we have been working, both in terms of research and also industrially partnered ones. I'll talk to you about, sorry, you see I actually used the first thing, ML. Machine learning techniques that we actually use, the kind of techniques that have actually now matured, and they allow us to do things that before we couldn't really actually do. I'll talk a little bit about methodology dimension, because at the end of the day, just because these techniques exist there, they can do a number of clever things. They're not going to do it by yourself. If you want to do proper analysis of your data, if you actually want to leverage real value from your data to change your business, there's a lot of work you have to do. You have to have the right people, the right processes, and the right teams, and the right attitude and structure as a company. And then put some concluding thoughts. Now, talk a little bit about us. The KEG and its previous kind of instances is doing research in this area since the 80s. And that was the time where we're talking about artificial intelligence, whatever, we're actually talking about humanoid robots that would actually take over the world and kill all the humans really off the thing. Forget about that. That didn't happen really. And quite a lot of things that I'll talk about, the big data or people are actually talking about, they will not happen. However, they concentrate the mind, which is definitely useful. Now, there were various, observing the human brain, the way that people, organizations solve problems naturally, we researchers in artificial intelligence and machine learning have been inspired to create algorithms, techniques, and tools that allow systems to be intelligent. So being able to actually do more than moving the data from there to there, from there to there, or in simple database, which is the majority of what early systems would actually do. Now, there were various techniques, algorithms, and tools have been emerged that in the 90s, we were actually kind of going to conferences and actually saying my algorithm is faster than yours or more accurate by 1% and stuff like that. But these tools are now mature, and you will actually find them embedded into a commercial software, for example, such as Oracle or SQL or a database. They're actually there. They're ready there to actually be used in a big way. That wasn't the case then. Business intelligence, the ability of actually kind of making, both visualizing patterns in your data, but also being able to actually kind of make informed decisions based on your data, is something that has actually matured, and it's actually kind of moving. Data mining, machine learning, and various AI techniques, they are actually now being used across the industry, and anything from commercial down to bioinformatics, medical, and also in medicine increasingly. Now, data sets are becoming larger steadily. So typically, you would actually go and say, well, I've run this experiment. What, you had 100 points. Now we have million, billion points. To a large extent, you're still running the same algorithms, really. But of course, the size is part of the problem of the big data, but it's not the whole problem. We also deal with increasingly more complex data. The time where we had nicely tabulated, think of spreadsheets, nicely tabulated information. The information are not nicely tabulated anymore. They're complex, they're media, they're pictures, they have time elements, they have special things that they can actually be integrated with things like Google Earth, and satellite navigation. It could actually have to do with time, and this is with uncertainty, with missing data, with errors, and with all the stuff that we as humans deal every day. And that's another kind of great, if you want, challenge really for us forward. And one of the things that allows us to be able to do this is the fact that computing, where in the 80s and the 90s, computer was just something that sat on your machine, or even earlier, you have a mainframe was that is the cloud. We used to call it the mainframe. Now they call it the cloud. And it looks like lots of PCs, one on top of the other, but effectively it's the same thing. It's just somebody else has got control over your data, your processing, your storage, etc., and you have to actually kind of address it remotely. Then we went to PCs, then we went to laptops. That's my computer really, is actually my phone really nowadays, more, or my tablet. And of course you got the Raspberry Pi, that can be, and various kind of pieces of silicon that can be integrated in any systems. And also you have this the Google, we can actually kind of wear now our computers. This is the Google glasses. The ability, the fact that now computers are everywhere, and the fact that computers now store and communicate with data everywhere, allow us now to talk about big data. Because the data is everywhere. I can actually take lots of pieces of information and integrate them. And of course, there has been a lot of work really on that, especially in the 90s and 80s with XML type of technologies, etc., that allow you now to deal and do clever things with various systems, data from various systems across, within and outside your organization. The other thing that's quite interesting, I just want to actually show you here. Here is that's a Samsung 3, S3 really, it's not even the latest one. It has much more both CPU and storage power than the contraption that took the man on the moon. Okay, and that's not a lot of years. Also, this is, anybody knows what a car is? Bugatti Veyron, okay? Veyron. This has actually got much more compute. It's really interesting. Cars have actually moved over many, many years, but they still have the same, more or less, combustion engine. One of the biggest things we actually have is that now a modern car is a huge computer with still a small engine. It just can be controlled and maximize the efficiency, really, as opposed to what we had before. And the Veyron has actually got much more processing power, information processing and communication and than the first generation of the shuttles mission. And this is really what makes us able to do things, because I can do things here that people will only dream to do only 10, 20 years ago, even if they knew roughly the algorithms, etc., that they could possibly do. Now, what's big data? Well, IBM says that every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. Now, quintillion is 10 to the 18 zeros after that. So much that 90% of the data of the world today has been created in the last 2 years alone. And of course, the problem here is that there's no way anybody can actually tell what there is. I remember once I went to this conference. I was actually talking to Tim Berners-Lee. Was actually remembered when the web was actually 4 machines. So they knew. They said we had to back up everything. Try to back up the web as it is now. Really, you can't. And really, this is really the problem. Big data, and actually, IBM tried to actually kind of look at the idea of big data. Came up with the 4 V's. Volume, yes, got lots of data. It's only 1/4 of the problem. The variety of the data, the complexity of the data that we actually have, is another part of it. The data is can actually be film, it could actually be multimedia, it could be a number of different things that you have to actually do. It could be a social network. The velocity, the fact that the data is actually transmitting faster than we can actually do anything sensible. And when it comes, for example, for the data transmitted across transactions on the banking, on the international banking, you can actually see how sometimes things go faster than we can actually do anything sensible about. And of course, the possibilities of things going wrong catastrophically is actually greatest. So the velocity, even few data that go faster than you can process it, is a problem. And the veracity, because at the end of the day, in all of these data, who knows what data makes sense, how much of the data are clean data that actually mean something, how much of that data have been polluted, have been generated for totally different reasons that we actually try to compute. And at the end of the day, how can you actually make sense out of it? There are other concerns. So I'm not going to talk about security, that's Harris here. There's privacy, and there's legal and ethical implications that are not the same. There are things that they're allowed to do, and there are things that perhaps it's naughty to do, but but it's not necessarily illegal to actually do. Now, the 4 V's, I'll go a little bit very thing that we're talking about the volume. We've got text Twitter, 12 terabytes of tweets every day. There's a huge amount of information. You can capture really the mood of a nation, the mood of a city and whatever. And again, Peter will actually talk about it in a moment, really kind of thing. But you can't do it if you're a human. You can't sit there and read every single tweet to find out whether you can't do that. There's computer logs, car engine logs. You take your car to to be fixed. What is the fix did they do? The guy will actually take a laptop. I was in Greece the other day. I saw this guy kind of thing, come from this ancient kind of garage, really kind of thing. The first thing he actually got to my car, he actually took the laptop out, plugged in, and downloaded my event log to see what the engine was actually going wrong. And he was actually looking at all the events that could give him a clue about what happened with my machine. They didn't really start unscrewing anything, just plugging things. And also, this is a big thing coming. We have 350 billion annual meter readings. The readings of electricity and gas, really kind of thing, the moment they will become automatic, the value you can actually get out of it, and also in terms of sustainability, whatever, is actually kind of great. The other thing is variety, yes, because you have to deal, and this is the problem, we don't have to have, your data is not going to be nicely behaved columns of data. There will actually be text, so our systems need to be able to understand text, voice. They could have unstructured data. You have to be able to do audio, video, emerging social networks, seeing how, for example, when people are going into their Facebook, for example, or LinkedIn, how their network is actually changing, even from when you move from one business, from a company to another. We have a project, for example, that's actually looking at that really kind of already. And also very semantic obstacles. Why? Because everything that's actually there is a piece of data, but until you actually have the meaning of this, and you can actually match it with another meaning, then you could actually have just lots of garbage really kind of thing there. And this idea that you can have, well, there's only one meaning and whatever, there isn't. Everybody sees the data from their own point of view. They can mean something slightly different in different contexts. So these are the key problems. Velocity, again, look at trade events, the calls that are actually coming. If you want to monitor, not that anybody would probably want to monitor our phone calls really, God forbid, but that's quite an interesting kind of a problem. But high performance computing is a big thing. You can't have single computers. You have to have arrays of computers doing things in big data centers to do it. And veracity. Would you bet your company on a pattern identified by an AI algorithm? So an AI algorithm says, if you change that and get rid of these 10 products, but you introduce that, then you're actually going to increase this thing there. But I'm not going to explain to you because the algorithm is too complicated for a human to understand. Would you actually bet your company? And if you do that, would you allow your doctor to use one of those if they're actually in a bit of a sort of not sure what to do next, really, kind of thing, in a case. And there are issues about how the systems can explain themselves. You can visualize what they actually mean. There is a problem that all these computers, the big data, can start going in various places. You know, you apply for a loan, it says, sorry, you turned down. Why? Algorithm said no. Okay? Now, what comeback have you got from that? Very little. There are all these issues. So we're going into this area of a number of projects that we've actually been conducting. Now, we've been working in this area that's now doing intelligent things with data since the late 80s, started in the 90s, really. And we moved away from the good old AI expert systems, really, into this area. This is an example of the data that you can actually reuse scientific knowledge for predicting fire spread within rooms. That's an example where basically before we had this system that we actually built, you needed to have an expert with a PhD in mathematical modeling to be able to conduct one of those. And then we created a system that by analyzing patterns that experts actually did, was reusing it, and a fireman could actually do a quick understanding, running kind of quick simulation to work out how a fire spread within a house, for example. And that was kind of one of the first projects we actually did. Another one, again, engineering, is when you want to actually create a new wheel, what do? You just start from scratch? No. If you're a company, you have actually cast a lot of wheels in the past. What you do is you find something you've done before, adopt it, and come up with a new case. And we're helping a lot of companies in the foundries actually reusing their own knowledge that they actually had, was actually hidden in small filing cabinets in place. So you can actually help people design, and that's kind of creating systems. Another example, that's what. In CERN, we're talking about velocity. Part of the problem from the Large Hadron Collider, really, is that when the experiment runs, there is no way we can capture all the data that it produces. You have to actually throw away things because there is no way to actually kind of store it as there. You have to actually try to say, oh, that's interesting, put it there for later. And that's the best you can actually do. Now, this is, okay, that's me a few years ago, really, kind of thing. We were kind of lucky to actually be there before the last bit was actually, that was just before the last segment was actually put. But we had a PhD student, and this is really the new, this is the data center, the grid in Geneva, kind of thing, that analyzes all the data from the Hadron Collider. And it's really interesting where I actually spoke to him and said, how about security? They looked at me and laughed. What security? This is data for everybody. We're not hiding anything here, okay? So security is important, but not for these people. Integrity of the data was, but not the security. In fact, if anything, they want to actually kind of keep it open. But I think the important thing was actually how you can actually make, and we were working on using virtualization to actually make sure that physicists could actually deal with data and run experiments very, very quickly, kind of thing. A lot of the problems they had is that systems can take forever and all sorts of problems could actually happen, and they're not, this thing is not actually used. Now, you have to appreciate that when you look at this big place which is called the grid in CERN, outside, what will you actually see is the air conditioning ducts, really, because the big problem they have is the amount of heat they are generating. Another fact. Do you know how much the consumption, the consumption of energy of all the servers of the government, not PCs and whatever, servers of the government, DVLA, GCHQ, etc., is 1.5 of the grid. They're taking 1.5% of the grid. Just for that. So you can imagine the kind of issues that you want to make sure that these things are not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs, but they're actually really doing something useful rather than actually burning energy unnecessarily. That's another case study, I cannot actually talk a little bit about exactly about it. It's a company that with funding from TSB, what we actually did is they had various, what they had is that there was a company that had a lot of subscribers, and they had a lot of the data over many, many years of their customers. They knew what they sold to them, what services they were giving them, what things they had actually bought for them. And they were trying to find out what makes a customer not renew their annual subscription. And we were looking at this, we were looking at that, and we couldn't really find anything. And then effectively we worked out one attribute was quite interesting. It was the date that they joined made sense. There was something about it. We did an analysis further out of it, and we worked out that if they had actually joined in March or February or January, there was very good chance of not coming back. Why is that? Because they would actually get their annual subscription. The company would actually get the bill, and near the end of the of the financial year, the chances of the financial director saying, "Ooh, we're a bit scrapped, we don't really need that," is more likely than to do it afterwards. So what did we do? We actually said, everybody who has started in January, February, March, they got 3 months free subscription. They made a lot of money by not losing people, really, because you see in April and May, everybody's got money in their budgets really to actually kind of run a subscription. That is quite interesting, because that's the thing that we would never look at. And this is what I will actually speak about in a moment, which is the idea of serendipity. Now, there's another project here. We're actually doing online advertising. You know, when you go to advertising and they say, and you see that advert, they say, how do they know that I was actually looking for shoes? Yeah, that could be us. Okay, we're working with a company kind of thing, trying to target people, and we've actually managed with our algorithms to actually increase the click-through thing by 4 times rate. Whether that although makes them more money, that's a different story. And this is really always the problem. I can get you great results and deals, and I can get you nice pictures and but unless you can actually make money out of it, it's of no use to man or beast. And that's the final thing, really. At the moment, this is the work we're actually doing, our business workflows. Part of the problem that modern computing have is that they can deal with data a snapshot of time, but they cannot do with processes and how things change with time. And one of the things we're actually trying to do is to do clever things that allow people the systems to actually monitor processes, real process, anything from the approval of a loan to the dispatch of something through from Amazon, for example, and try to identify problems that are actually there. We're also looking at fraud detection and money laundering and cyber attacks, really. There are signatures, things that can happen in particular order that may indicate specific patterns that we have observed in the past, and that, if we match, we actually give to a user and saying, and this is just give you a little bit of math, because there's a little math into it, but I thought that's all the math I'm going to put this time. I know people hate math, but sorry, it is data analysis. That's the kind of thing that actually matches workflows and tries and allows us to reuse knowledge effectively. Now, we've got 2 PhDs completing that area, 3 currently pushing the boundaries. There's a lot of stuff we're doing at the moment that we hope that we will be able to apply in 5 years' time. And there's a lot of things that we can actually now work with companies, and we're working, that there are the things that are based on the work we did before. And that's something that as a university we have to always remember to be the one step ahead, okay? Otherwise there's no point. Now, key methods, algorithms, I've actually put you here. These are all the things: data mining, ways of classifying, association rule mining, finding information and patterns in the data is very important. Clustering things together. We were actually trying to look at what makes a good golfer. Looking at data, coming out of streams from actually observing golfers. And what you can actually do, you find that these clustering can actually show you how things are matched together, and that can give you a lot of insight in the knowledge. There are also other evolutionary techniques that the artificial neural networks, genetic algorithms, swarm techniques, and also the case-based reasoning that we're actually using. And increasingly, we're moving into fuzziness and hybrid systems, which will be the next generation ones that will actually get that extra, they will solve the extra problems, possibly in, we'll be talking about 5-10 years, really. We have to keep ourselves busy. Now, problem is, okay, we have all these algorithms that do brilliant things. How reliable are predictive analytics? That's another word I hate. It doesn't mean anything. For anybody who's Greek and knows that the word analytics is not a adjective, but never mind. This guy, everybody knows, is Usain Bolt, right? He's in Beijing, and he's just run 9:69. First person under 9:70. Okay? Look what happens. Yeah? His lasers are undone. Right? So I can actually argue, a piece of software can actually argue and say that if you want to run 100 meters under 9:69, you have to undo your left shoelaces. Couldn't you? That would be 100% accurate. You will have a very low coverage in support from the database. What I'm trying to actually say is one has to be very, very careful. There are a lot of very dangerous statistics down there that can actually come up with nonsense out of data. And that could be one that could possibly come out with. Basically, what makes data mining, what makes companies be able to, from our experience, to successfully use data mining? And I tried to actually distill it for you guys, really, kind of thing here, really. And I've very often kind of been discussing that within various fora that we actually have from people, from data miners. But at the end of the day, it's about the right people. At the moment, we do not have, universities are not generating people who can actually understand and can do well with big data. We have computer scientists, we've got statisticians, we've got mathematicians and whatever, not people who understand and can put things together. How you actually manage the project, at the end of the day, there's no way you can actually give me all your data, I'll go away for 3 months and I'll come back and I'll say, here's how your company will actually change. It's a partnership. It's a partnership between the data miners and the company. It's an issue of processes that allow companies to become really data insight-based companies that actually take decisions based on their data rather than on the seat of people's pants. And it's actually the product you actually build at the end of the day of what quality and what reliability you actually have. They can really take, these things can actually look very shiny in a graphically beautiful kind of thing. But at the end of the day, you have to understand what is it that they can actually do. Now, companies need to mature. You need to also understand what is the big data. What's the right size for you? You could actually take too much data and still get the same information, or you can get half of the data and still come up with the same information. It is quite interesting. And also, the idea of looking for serendipity. There is this kind of urban myth that they're actually saying that when somebody was doing data mining for 7-Eleven in America, they actually worked out that there was a correlation between people buying beer and people buying diapers, nappies as we call them here, every Friday night. And the idea there is that when they actually put things together into their, nobody can possibly go there and look for that. It's something you stumble upon as a fact. And what they did is actually made millions of pounds just by putting the beers next to the nappies. Why? Because every Friday the man comes, and sorry, it's marketing, so I have to be very stereotypical here. The man comes home, says, I'm going to go for a beer. Wife says, don't forget to get some nappies, kind of thing. And that is the typical thing that the data were actually saying. Now, there are methodologies, and we are actually kind of working on this, that at the end of the day, it's not about modeling. This bit of doing the maths is here. is about business understanding. Unless you understand what the business is, what the aims is, and what is it that you're trying to actually do. To understand what the data are. Sometimes you get the data and people don't understand what the meaning before individual parts of the data. The preparation. Most data you will actually find are actually empty. You have a lot of empty spaces, you have a lot of corrupt pieces of information, you've got lots of missing logs and stuff like that, and you need to sort it out. Now, it's generally said that this bit is 90% of any process, okay? And except for that. And then at the end of the day, it's the issue of evaluation. And the evaluation is the bit that actually tells you what is this analysis of my data telling me that could be useful for me to feed back to actually to change both my business, but also change the way I collect data and actually use the data. So really what you have is you have a cyclic process, okay, that goes there, that actually keeps coming back. Otherwise, all you get is you get a little snapshot, you found a few information, you may come across something, but you can't call yourself a data influence company. And something else to actually say, I've actually kind of left it there. There was a discussion from Professor Keith Reynolds. He's a statistician. We machine learners love to hate the statistician. The statisticians say, well, we've been doing that for years. Not really. But data mining is about humans interacting with data effectively. These tools and the things help us to do it. We deal with huge amount of data. But at the end of the day, you got to get your hands dirty. You have to go down there, understand the business, understand what the data is actually telling you, and being able to make a difference. And if I had one piece of advice I would actually give for any project, what you do, when you work with a customer, as we do, you put the customer in the center, okay? It's their business, their data, they know better. You're here to actually kind of facilitate a journey of discovery, a journey of change, really kind of thing. But I can't go around and actually as a data miner, as a big data person actually saying, I know better than you how to run your business, or you're going to be in serious trouble. And at the end of the day, we find that you have a transformational effect to the company and the business, because after a project like that, you have a totally different company, a company that actually knows how to learn, knows how to actually deal with data, etc. And this is my last slide. I know there will be a lot of discussion. We have been lucky to actually be working with a number of companies over the years, some of it with external funding. Some of the people that you actually see speaking from industry afterwards are people that we are actually collaborating with, seeking even other areas of collaboration. It's the bit that takes us out of the lab in the real world that makes us real academics, and people who can actually go back to our students and actually saying, look guys, these are the jobs that we actually, this is what you need to actually know, this is the case, and put some context into their education. And that's also the fun bit of my job. And that's me done.
Hello, everybody. My name is Haris Muratidis. I'm a professor of software systems engineering at Brighton, and I'm also leading a new initiative at the University of Brighton to establish a research cluster on secure and dependable software systems. It's an effort that we're doing, strategic effort, to further develop our presence in the area of security. I have to confess something. I like Miltos' talk very much, but I had too much of the word data. So probably for the next 5 years. So what I'll try to do in my talk is change the word data to security. So at the end of it, possibly you will keep thinking about secure data rather than just data. This is a brief layout for my talk today. So 3 main areas that I will try to explore. The first one is security information systems. Why security is important. What is the current landscape in the UK businesses regarding security, especially in terms of security breaches and cost and so on. I will then say a few things about security research. Just a brief overview of the research that has been happening in the universities around the world for the last 40, 50 years and so. And then I will discuss about some research that we're doing at the University of Brighton, both in terms of theoretical research, but also practical research and how it can be applied to industry. So first of all, why security is important? Well, I think if I was giving that talk 10, 15 years ago, possibly the actual content of that slide will be quite different. But nowadays, Miltos gave some good examples of that. Information systems, software systems are pretty much everywhere, in every aspect of our life. Banking, healthcare, telecommunications, military, government, you name it, it's there. And because of that, there is an increasing number of systems that store sensitive and private data. I'll try to say that word as less as I can, I promise. We're talking about bank accounts here, health records, customer details, lots of different things that are quite sensitive and private. On the other hand, a lot of those software systems are used to perform critical processes, business processes, military operations, bank transactions, and so on. So securing such systems with such a critical information data stored on them and performing such critical processes is not an option anymore. It is a necessity. Going back to the example that Miltos gave before about CERN, they might not be interested about the integrity of the confidentiality of their data. They want the data to be out there. But there are other aspects when we talk about security. I'm sure they want to make sure that the information that they get, the data they get from their systems is accurate. So it is integrity. I'm sure they want to have the data available all the time. So we're talking about availability of data, which is relevant to security and so on. So we have to think, and I think I will say a few things later on about that. Security is not just a technical issue and is not something very focused. We need to have a better idea about it in order to be able to deal with that. So it's quite interesting. Every 2 years there is a national survey that is taking place regarding security breaches in UK businesses. The latest one, I have some of the figures here. I'm pretty happy to give information to anyone who's interested where they can find those reports and so on. But it is quite interesting reading for various reasons. First of all, there is a lot of positive trends that can be identified. So a lot of good things that UK businesses are doing regarding securing their data, securing their systems. The number of companies with a formal security policy has never been higher. And that's a trend that it continues to increase. So the more businesses are interested about security, the more they come up with some kind of formal security policy to protect them. 16% of IT budget is spent on average on security when security is some kind of high priority. And that's a significant 5% more than a year ago. Companies continue to prioritize information security. 76% of large organizations and 93% of small businesses believe security is critically important for them. So there is a positive trend in the sense that UK businesses recognize the need to be secure and they're trying to do something about it. They invest on that. They take it seriously, and that's a positive thing. On the other hand, there is a lot of negative trends that we can identify from the survey. So 93% of large organizations and 87% of small ones had at least a security breach last year. Now that's a very significant number, the first one and the second. And what is also quite important is that for small companies, 87% is almost 11% more than what it was the year before. 11% is a very significant number. In terms of costs, it's very difficult to give an accurate costing, but what the survey indicates is that the cost to UK's businesses for dealing with security breaches has tripled since 2012. So in the last 2 years, that cost has actually tripled and is in the order of billions of pounds per year. So that's how much it costs UK businesses to deal with security breaches. So in terms of research, what can we do about it? What we have been doing for the last 40, 50 years. Security is a very interesting aspect because the way that information systems, software systems develop and bringing new challenges, new technologies are coming in and so on. The same is the case for security, and the same is the case for securing those systems. So initially, most of the research was related to definition of security models, definition of security policies, how we can specify and implement policies that can support and provide some kind of security for our information systems. There is a lot of work on security architectures, work on how we can monitoring the execution of software systems and identify abnormalities on those executions, which most of the time indicates there is some kind of vulnerability or attack taking place. There is a lot of work on trying to define architectures to keep up with the technological advances that we face. So lots of work, for instance, on service-oriented security architectures. There is a lot of work on security mechanisms and protocols, how we can develop protocols and mechanisms to secure our systems. Noticeably work on access control, digital signatures, encryption and decryption and so on. And there is also a lot of work on security tools related to how we can detect intrusions, how we can detect vulnerabilities, how we can detect different viruses and so on. Some of that work works, some obviously doesn't, as we have seen lots of examples, even the latest one, as was mentioned before by Gordon a couple of weeks ago. So, but this is pretty much the main areas where research has been focused for the last 50 years or so. The first kind of security works were back in the 60s, and since then there has been increasing in volume and I think in quality as well. So if I could give an observation about all that work, is that if we really notice each one of them deals with security as a technical aspect. So we're talking about developing security policies, we're talking about developing security architectures, protocols and mechanisms, technical protocols and mechanisms, and different security tools that help us to understand some of the technicalities behind security. But is security just a technical problem? And Milton's mentioned before, data, we need to put it in a context and understand the people behind it, the environment, and the technology as well. And it's the same for security pretty much. We're living in an environment where information systems, software systems are embedded in human society. That means that humans have to interact with those systems. They have to get information, they have to provide information, they have to make sure that any security procedures we might have in place, they are followed. Not just the technical aspects of that, but also kind of social aspects. I will just refer to an example of an attack, a non-technical attack known as social engineering. Some of you might have heard of that before, which relies pretty much on human intervention and how you can trick, if you want, somebody to break normal security procedures. There was a very big case of social engineering, I think it was back in the 70s, where any NHS record could be, you could get any NHS record for £150. And the way that they were able to get that was not by breaking any security mechanism, was by calling a GP or a hospital, pretending to be somebody on an emergency room and require information about that particular patient. And because, staff were not trained, because there was a lot of misunderstanding about security and its social aspect, they were able to get that information without any technical knowledge. So we need to be very clear that security is not just a technical problem. It is a socio-technical problem, and we need to look at it from that perspective. It is also a problem of multiple views. some will say it is difficult or even impossible to guarantee 100% security. I agree with that statement. I think it's very naive to say that you can guarantee 100% that a system is secure. So the main goal is to provide an acceptable security level. And what we mean by that, usually there's a trade-off between a number of factors. We need to trade off between security and budget sometimes, usability, time, and effectiveness. I'm not sure if you can see the picture here. There's quite a few bright lights, but pretty much it is a bicycle with an X amount of locks on it, a quite large amount of locks. Is that bicycle secure? Can someone guarantee that it's 100% secure? I'm not sure. It looks secure as it is right now. On the other hand, you know, what is the trade-off that the person using that bicycle has to live with? If they have to spend an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon locking and unlocking their locks, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it from an attacker's point of view? Do they have to spend their time and effort just for getting that particular bicycle? So security, we need to see it from multiple views and understand that there is always a trade-off that we need to deal with. By the way, if somebody can tell me how many locks we have on that bike, then they can get some of the sweets on the back. It is also a problem of scope and context. So, you know, lots of usual approaches involve introducing security mechanisms pretty much blindly, or without considering the environment, without considering the people, without considering the relevant technologies and so on. So, but it is quite important to understand that if one thing works in one scenario, in one context, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will work in all of them, especially with security on mind. We need to be able to understand what is the requirements that we have for every single system that either we build or we want to develop and so on. And then through that understanding, be able to identify what is the best security mechanism that we can use. What is the best security support that we can provide so the requirements we have identified can actually be satisfied. So there is a lot of recent research that calls for, if you want to rethink the way that security is approached, the way that we develop secure system, and the way that we consider security as well. There is a lot of argument that existence of secure systems cannot be achieved just by looking at the technical aspects of that. So we need to look at the social aspects of that. We need to understand, if you want, the environment where the system will be situated. In other words, we need to be able to adapt a security focus on our development process. What is called, or you might have come across the term security by design. So that means from the word, if you want, go, we start developing systems and thinking about security, not adding security as an afterthought. Here is a bit more arguments about that kind of approach. So as I mentioned before, security is affected by the environment in which the system is situated. Now, when we talk about developing software systems, we're looking to understand the environment they're situated during the requirements analysis process. So unless we consider security at that stage, it's very difficult to understand how security is affected or not by the environment that the system is situated. There is also a lot of research that indicates that improving security means limiting the cases of security vulnerabilities. So how can we reduce vulnerabilities? We can reduce vulnerabilities by understanding why they exist in the first place. And yes, there is a lot of vulnerabilities that come down to technical details, but there is a lot of vulnerabilities that coming as part of conflicting with different requirements that we might have. So if we can understand the relationship between security requirements and other requirements of our system, we might be able to reduce this type of vulnerabilities. The process would be similar to any engineering activity. You wouldn't expect somebody building a bridge to start laying the bricks straight away. They need to understand where that bridge will be situated. They need to understand what factors they might influence the development of that bridge. You know, you might have traffic, you might have wind, all of different aspects that you need to consider. And then once you have an understanding of that, then you can develop a bridge that is appropriate for that specific location. The same is with security in software systems. Unless we really understand what external factors might affect it, we won't be able to develop something that is really secure. There is also, if you want, a more kind of economic argument related to that. There have been a lot of studies, and they have considered that the relatively cost to correct security defects by software development stage is 1% of the budget if these are corrected at design level, 6.5% if it is during implementation, 15% during testing, and 100% during maintenance. So as you can see, the earlier we can identify security defects and vulnerabilities and correct them, the most economically we can develop the project. You might argue, okay, that sounds a good idea. Why is not working? Why we haven't done more of it? I think it goes back to foundation. So there is a lot of interesting things that are missing. There is a lot of, if you want lots of languages that they haven't been developed, languages that will help us to understand and model such type of security in systems. There is a lot of misunderstanding about different semantics that are needed in order to support analysis and design of security properties. Methodologies that exist, they do not create a security control that will enable us to start thinking security from the start of the projects. And there is a lot of lack of tools and techniques that take the idea of security by design and implementing it. One more thing I should say about that is there is also no one way of representing security concerns at different levels. So far, for example, there is no way that you could represent security at the requirements level, and that will translate to design, implementation, and so on. So there is a lot of mismatch between there. And some aspects of that, you know, it is because there is two main areas that are involved. You have security engineering and you have information systems engineering, software engineering, and sometimes they don't talk to each other, so it's very difficult to get one detailed view. So on the other hand, there has been some promising research for the last 10, 15 years. So there have been some principles and taxonomies that pretty much provide some guidelines and assist on understanding some of the security issues that are important. A number of security patterns pretty much capture experiences of security experts, so they can be used, those experiences, by non-security experts. There are some efforts related to what they are known in the research community as anti-based approaches. So in these approaches, there are some methods and methodologies that try to take into account the behavior of some attackers, some malicious users, and identify obstacles and some of the attacker's goals, and they start to analyze from an attacker's point of view rather than from a system's point of view. There is some work on relationship-based approaches where an information system or even an organization is modeled in terms of different actors that they might have, different users, stakeholders, attackers, and try to understand the relationship between those. And identify vulnerability points on those relationships. And there is a lot of work also on extending languages that are quite commonly used, such as UML, for example. So there are some extensions for security for UML. There has been also some efforts from industry, and I'm just noting here two of the more well-known in that area. So there is the security development lifecycle that provides a framework based on a set of practices and provides also a set of tools to help you analyze threat and attacks. And there is the comprehensive lightweight application security process, which is pretty much a process that enables you to understand security from different perspectives and across different levels. It is a process and approach that is based on documenting your information on every single step of the development process and making sure that everything happens as it should. So what is it that we're doing at the University of Brighton regarding that topic? I think we first of all start from the principle that we need to embed security considerations from early stages of the development process. So in other words, the idea of security by design. And what we're trying to do is develop solutions, develop methodologies, develop languages, develop tools that will enable us to look security as a socio-technical issue from multiple levels. So we're looking at requirements, design, implementation, and so on, and from multiple views. So, if you are, for instance, a CEO, you might want to look at the organizational aspects related to security. If you are a security engineer, you might have something specific that you want to look related to your security requirements. So effectively, we're talking about the same information, the same data, if I use the word data, but from a different perspective, try to understand it differently. And also what is very important is that our efforts, our work is trying to combine people, technology, and processes to enable us to understand that context. So this is a brief information, brief overview, of a framework that we have developed that supports some of those aspects. And I will give later on a website where you can download the tool if you want to experiment with, that you can develop some of the work that I'm mentioning here. So the framework has pretty much four main areas, four main development processes. The first one is the modeling language. So we have developed a set of concepts that enable us to model security within the context of an organization. And I will give a bit more information about that later on. The second is a security-aware process. What that process does is kind of, in a nice way, force you to think about security from the start of the development process. So from the word go of developing a software system or analyzing a software system, you need to start thinking about the security of it. It provides a set of views. As I said, we will see later on some more concrete examples of those, but for different stakeholders, you can have a different view of your system. And also it supports an automated tool that, apart from enabling you to model and analyze security, it provides a number of automated techniques that helps you to get some more information and identify some vulnerabilities in your designs. So the modeling language, one of the, if you want, novelties, one of the important things is that it combines works and concepts from different areas that are related to that. So we have some work coming from the requirements engineering discipline. So we talk about actors, goals, plans, resources. These are concepts that you don't need to be technical or security expert to recognize. Most of us can understand what we mean by a goal, what we mean by a plan, and we can understand it in different perspectives, both at an organizational perspective and an individual perspective as well. We combine that with concepts that coming from security requirements literature. So we talk about security constraints, secure goals, secure plans, and so on. So to give you an example, you might have an actor. An actor could be a component of your system, or it could be an individual, a human actor. They might have some specific goals that they need to achieve as part probably of the company strategic aims, or individually they have to fulfill some goals. They might have some plans that they want to use in order to fulfill those goals, and they need to use some resources. On the other hand, they might have some constraints related to their security. So they might have a plan that it might introduce more vulnerabilities than an alternative plan. So we try to understand all those relationships. And then the language also helps you to understand pure security engineering aspects, threats, vulnerabilities, risk, and so on, always in the same context. Something interesting is we also try to introduce and embed in that modeling language concepts coming from different technologies. As Miltos mentioned before, different names might be used for different technologies, but some of the aspects are pretty much the same. So, for instance, the tool that is easily available online looks at also security of cloud computing and how you can understand some of your security requirements and then be able to understand how these requirements will be affected by different cloud solutions. The process of the approach, and I don't want to spend too much time on the details of that, but pretty much it is an iterative process. And what helps you to do is start by analyzing your system in a very abstract way, and then getting deeper and deeper in that analysis. So you start by analyzing your system, let's say, as one actor, and then you try to understand the different actors involved, what the system and your organization consist of, and how that affects the analysis. It also supports a number of steps that helps you to analyze and identify security requirements, the relevant mechanisms that are needed in order for you to fulfill those requirements, and also an analysis of different threats and vulnerabilities that are related to the requirements and to the security mechanism. This is a bit of information regarding the views. So there are four main views that we're looking at. So we have the organizational view, which pretty much gives you an overall view of your organization in terms of actors. And actors could be both internal, part of your organization, it could be external as well. And also how these actors are related with each other. So if there is some dependencies between those actors, how these dependencies evolve, and how these dependencies might affect different security constraints that you might have, or different security considerations that you need to take into account. We then have the security requirements view, which is pretty much a deeper representation of the organizational view. So you're going into specific aspects of your organizational view and try to analyze it a bit further. We have the security components view. So once you have understand and analyzed the different organization aspects and you have defined a number of security mechanisms, then you need to understand how those security mechanisms can interact with different actors that you might have on your organization and what is the implication in terms of security. And then we have the security attacks view. So this one pretty much allows you to model and understand how attacks can influence the model that you have created for your organization, the model that you have created for your system, both if you want on a technical aspect, how it can affect different mechanisms, but also on a more social aspect, how it can affect the different relationships and dependencies between the different system components. This is a bit of information about the tool. It is based on a platform that is easily available, and I guess the main website to remember here is this one, www.securetropos.org. You can download the tool from there and you can find more information about that as well. I would say that apart from modeling and giving you the chance or the ability to develop the models I just mentioned, there is a number of analysis techniques that can be done by the tool. So it can help you, for instance, to understand the different threats and how these threats whether these threats are mitigated or not based on the models that you create and so on. We have used the research for quite few scenarios. So there has been some work on healthcare, banking, telecommunication, and governmental departments. I will just mention here two examples, and one of them was it was part of the knowledge transfer partnership that Miltos mentioned earlier on as well. It was under that scheme. and there was a company that they needed to be able to automate a number of communication processes they had with their clients. But due to confidentiality issues and security issues of the data, it was very important for them to make sure that that new process was secure. And we used that tool to be able to analyze the vulnerabilities that they had in place and suggest some solutions on how to overcome those. What is interesting about that, it was that there was a security analysis that was performed by a third party, one of the clients of that company, to make sure that the new process that was developed was actually secure enough for what they needed. And the results we got for that was that it was indeed quite secure and they didn't have any problems. So I think that's a quite good success story for us, in the sense that we were able to take a system, understand its vulnerabilities, and give a solution that overcome those vulnerabilities. There has been also some, if you want, more theoretical work in terms of some case studies related to the Common Electronic Purse specification. Some of you might have heard of that. Some of the analysis we have done identified there was a vulnerability on some of the communication links, and then we were able to provide some solutions to that as well. So, as a summary, and I hope I'm okay on time, I think if you could keep one thing from today's talk, is that security is not just a technical issue anymore. It has evolved, and it is mostly a socio-technical problem. So it is important that we're able to embed security considerations from the start of the process. There is some evidence that indicates that following such approach will reduce cost and will lead to the development of more secure systems. And one of the things that we try to do at University of Brighton is to lead research in that area in order to be able to support the development of techniques and practices that enable companies, both small and large, to successfully apply that idea. And that's all from me. Thank you very much. If you need any more information here, you can find it.
I'm here today to talk about Imagine Brighton with my good friend Peter Pizarro, who works at Datanauts. I'll let him introduce himself more fully. His CV is longer and more impressive than mine. So I'm going to get started today with really just a very high-level overview of some of the stuff that I've come into contact with the businesses that I work with at iCrossing. And I'd start by just sort of reiterating the theme of today, which is big data, big deal. When Gordon first came to me and said, what do you think about this? I thought, well, it's snappy, it's marketing, it kind of suits the world that I work in. And actually, you may have read in the press a lot of kind of backlash about the term big data beginning to show through. And there's lots of different trend analysis about cloud computing and big data and all these buzzwords that Miltos was referencing earlier on, which is just part of that kind of innovation curve that we're going through at the moment. So big data, big deal. What's my answer to that? Well, ultimately, I think there is a yes-no answer to it. I'd say it is a big deal. The reason I think it's a big deal is that until someone put the word big in front of the word data, a lot of the conversations that are happening now never really happened. And obviously this is because of the technology and the decreasing cost and all the other things that are going on in the world right now with regard to intelligent data use. But it took someone to really, I presume an American, to put the word big in front of it and make it sound sort of exciting and sexy and everything else that it needed to be, for everyone to start talking about data initiatives, about open data, about how we can make things more efficient, how we can use loads of different types of data to actually make better decisions. So for that reason alone, I would say big data has been a really good and important step in this journey of ours that we're all on in business. The other thing I think it's done is it's given people who weren't necessarily working in data a chance to talk about it as well, brand managers. They look at it, I think, more along the lines of, well, anything that is bigger than a spreadsheet is big data. As Milt has pointed out, it's actually far more complex, and the 4 V's that I've heard numerous times do quite a good job of defining it. But once again, I go back to the idea that talking about data has been a really important thing over the last decade, and this explosion of data that we've got and how we can use it has been a good thing. On the negative side, I'd say the term has become overused. Those same brand managers talking about it don't really have an idea exactly what it's about, how complex it is, and the challenges that they face. Often poor statistical methods have been used to make poor decisions. People have lost a lot of money and are getting a little bit despondent with actually what big data and the initiative could mean for them. And arguably, I'd say big data at the moment is in the grounds of it's promised a lot and not really delivered very much. But I would say there's a big yet after that sentence, because I do think that over the next 5 years or so, we will start to see the fruition of a lot of these projects that have just taken a while to get going. But as it's happening, we are seeing some success stories around it. I wanted to just talk for a second. I think we may have lost a slide here. Let me just fast forward a bit. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to go back to that slide. The order's changed very slightly. But basically, what happened around about 2007 was there was a data gold rush. This was really defined by the fact that unstructured data overtook structured for the first time. Okay, so a lot of businesses were thinking, okay, here's social, here's location-based, here's multi-device. We have an opportunity here to capture as much data as we want about people and learn some really interesting things from it. And everyone went for it. And actually, the data gold rush should have really been called an insight gold rush. It's not only really now, a lot of people are realizing that actually they're missing the important bit, which is, whilst all this data exists, what can we actually learn from it? Where is the knowledge? Going back to some of the things that were said before. And I wanted to just go back to the slides I skipped over. So this is a picture. For a beer after today's talk on me, can anyone tell me what that picture is of or where it was taken in 2005? Yes? It is the Vatican. Wow, that is fantastic. I've put this picture in quite a few presentations and no one's ever got it. So well done.
I've seen it before.
Have you? Okay. Yeah, so this was in 2005 when Pope Benedict was unveiled at the Vatican as the new Pope. Okay, this is when Pope Francis was unveiled in 2013. This in two pictures really demonstrates how the world is changing. The real theme that I'm getting towards here is connectivity. Okay, we are all connected to the internet most of the time. It's in our pocket pretty much all the time. There are apps and there are logins and there are things going on in your pocket right now that you would hate to know the ins and outs of. You probably already suspect them, and yes, they're all true. Google and Facebook are driving an initiative whereby they want the entire population of the world to be connected to the internet 100% of the time. That's why they're buying drones. That's why they're launching balloons into space to connect Africa to the web. This is the reality of the big corporations that run our data world at the moment and what they're about. Now, there are huge benefits about that. Connectivity is a wonderful thing, and knowledge and all of those things that we can get from it is a real, real positive. So I'm personally very excited about it. But alongside that, there are concerns, there are security issues, all of that stuff. But the reality is this: we are a world of connected people. Okay, and within that connection, it is data, and within that data is insight and knowledge. And when that can be used to good effect, which we'll come on to with our project a little later on, it's actually quite groundbreaking and very exciting. Certainly to me, it's very exciting. Of course, businesses will use it to sell you more stuff. That's fact. When TV was invented, it's no different. This is just an evolutionary process. So what I really wanted to talk about here is what is the main fact around kind of big data. And ultimately, forgetting the term big data, what we're saying is that if you can use data more intelligently, you can make better decisions. This is what gives businesses an advantage over their nearest competitor. If you have good data that matches your business objectives, then you stand a better chance of doing well in the market versus someone who doesn't. Okay? It's quite simple in that sense. And I think big data promises to fulfill that potential, but it's just become a little bit kind of confused over time, I think. And I'll come on to how I want to simplify it for you a little bit in a minute. So just to flip past the slides. Since 2007, in this gold rush of insight, there have been some real success stories. These are companies with large budgets that can do quite big projects quite fast and can afford to fail. eBay, for example. eBay monitor, they use the images from their motor sales part of their website to forecast the finances of that section of the site. They can understand and using probability can predict the likelihood of the sale of a car on eBay purely based on the code of the photo that the user has uploaded. They can tell what car it is, they can tell what time of day the photo is taken, they can tell what condition the car is in, and as a result predict how likely that is to sell and they now use that as one of the main bases of their financial modelling. It's a really impressive use of what I would call unstructured and big data working in action. Ocado, twofold. I saw a fantastic presentation from them. Not only did they use dynamic offers targeted to individuals on their screen. So if you're a vegetarian, you never see a meat offer on their front page. Simple but effective. They also, in a sort of distribution warehouse, use an incredibly complex and measured approach to how fast can we get baskets filled to go out on delivery. Look it up online. I think there's a great video that really details how that's done. Money Supermarket, you may have very recently pivoted their entire business. Okay, so this is a website that gave advice and allowed you to populate quote forms in order to get the best deals on certain products, particularly financial products. Their business is now about the data over the years of those people filling out quotes that they have. I think behind Experian, they're now the largest data source on customer information. Purely because they've been doing that for so long, they now have that data stored there. Rolls-Royce, so this is more in the sort of engineering. I put this in for you, Miltos. The measurement of their engines around the world is so specific and so real-time. It's eye-watering. Again, a presentation I went to before, I couldn't quite believe how they were able to do it. I know nothing more than that, but it was impressive. Facebook, we've talked a little about those guys today. Pretty much the cutting edge of data use. But really, other than those sort of success stories, the message I'm getting from a lot of the clients I work with at iCrossing is one of disillusion and distraction. I want to use data, but what do I really need to be doing? How can I make it work for me? I put up here the two most common questions that we hear, which is, I've got all this data, what do I do with it? Perfectly valid question. It's a feeling of being overwhelmed. And I've invested millions, so people who actually have got a project off the ground, and this is a B2C example, I have a single view of my customers. I've combined my CRM data with other data collected. I can see everything really clearly. What should I do next? These are technology projects that they thought were a great idea, that maybe the kind of strategy behind it hadn't been worked out to start with. But anyway, we shouldn't get too downbeat about it, because I do feel that the opportunity is there, but it's going to be a slower burner than I think most people thought when this term big data came on the scene maybe 5 years ago. And these are some of the reasons why. So, but without wanting to insult anyone's intelligence, I'm kind of going to go back to basics, because this is what I feel, if we're going to work in the big data field, in a business context, this is some of the sort of really simple things that need to be sorted out. So number one, when anyone speaks to me about what they should be doing with things like their web analytics, that kind of thing, the first question is always also, what are your objectives? What are you trying to do? Is it growing the business? Is it efficiencies? It could be anything. So defining objectives and attaching KPIs to those is still should be the first questions that you ask yourself, even when you're trying to do something in big data or something quite complex. And building a measurement framework to work out how far you're getting towards those defined objectives. Data really only comes into it then. And I'm going to throw out something today which I like the feel of, which is if you replace all the buzzwords that we have going around by whatever the first word of it is with the word right, then I think you might actually be onto something. So if you change big data to right data, you're actually beginning to get somewhere. Real time. Do you really need a real-time dashboard to tell you how many people are visiting your website? Is the reporting need of the business that important that you need to know last hour what happened? For some businesses, it's the case. Okay, so they would say yes, I do. But actually, right time is a far better way to look at it. Actually, I only look at a weekly report. So let's not go to town on a real-time feed, because you're wasting money and energy in the wrong place, really. You should actually be thinking about what you're using the data for rather than ploughing money into a fairly sophisticated project. So this is my back to basics. So I'm going to replace big data, big deal with right data. That's my new thing for today. So some of the barriers to this, and this is really leading up to what we're really here to talk about, which I'm going to hand over to Peter about, is the fact that there is a skills shortage in this area. I saw a report recently where there's going to be a shortage of something like 200,000 data specialist positions between now and 2016 or 2018. That's quite frightening, especially when you have potentially some other countries that are quite far ahead of the UK in this. And it's been an absolute joy to work with Miltos and Gordon, often over lunch, but at least we're trying to do something. We're trying to get the University of Brighton, raise the bar and turn Brighton into a bit of a centre of excellence. And the launch of this course, September, is going to be a massive step forward. So that's really exciting. But there is something about Brighton, which is really why Peter and I have it's caught our eye. Brighton has quite a unique makeup of people. If you get past the bohemian vegetarian shoe shops, there is a very large digital cluster of businesses and companies, a lot of technology-minded people, equally matched by a creative force to be reckoned with. And really, I think there's a massive opportunity for particularly the City of Brighton to really achieve something quite special in the creative technology sector. And Peter and I have been working probably about a year together on trying to build a community down there. So I run a group called Big Data Brighton with Peter. We also infiltrate other Brighton communities, of which there are literally hundreds within kind of programming, coding, creative, dance, whatever you'd like to mention. There's a meetup group about it in Brighton, and we've really tried to kind of pull some of these people together. And that came first. It really happened in September of last year at the Digital Festival when we ran a hackathon looking at financial crisis data, and turned out a whole gallery of kind of data visualizations, which we put on at the University of Brighton as a kind of exhibition of what we discovered at the hackathon. And really that's now beginning to evolve. And the focus really why we're here today and why Gordon invited us is because all of those kind of hackathon type projects and community led initiatives are converging on one specific project that we really want to go to town on, if you'll excuse the pun, which is a citywide data platform. And I guess at this point it would make sense for me to welcome Peter, and he'll really go through that in a bit more detail to say what we're thinking, what we're trying to achieve, and actually for any ears in the room who are interested to really kind of whet your appetite and hopefully get you excited and involved on whatever level you can.
As Sam said, I'm Peter Pissarro. I'm Chief Data Officer at Datanauts. And just to give you a quick background on where I came from and how I got involved with all of this. So up until about 2.5, 3 years ago, I was an academic as well. I have a computational neuroscience background. So I hopped out of academia, went to work for a company in Brighton called Brandwatch, who are a social media monitor, and applied a lot of the ideas I was playing with in computational neuroscience to social media. And that's about the time I was leaving Brandwatch is when I met Sam, and we started putting together these ideas on big data and hackathon. And as he said, we've moved closer and closer to the project that we think we feel most passionately about doing in Brighton, and that we think can draw a lot of resources in from the community to do. But I'll take a step back for a minute and just talk about, for any big data project, what would be the questions that I would ask. So what my day job is now, I'll come into a company, they have a project, they want to execute something to do with data. First, we need to find out about who they are as a company, where they want to go, and how they're going to get there. So these three key questions in building any data system, I want to know the answers to these very deeply before I start building that system. So what we're trying to do is to apply this to the city of Brighton itself, thinking of the city of Brighton as the client. So as I said, I came from a computational neuroscience background. So what really inspires me about doing a project like this is a city, to me, looks very much like an organism. It looks, a lot of the tools that I was applying in computational neuroscience. So these are images from the Human Connectome project, where they're looking at the structure of the human brain now. Can they figure out the large-scale information flow, the connectivity between different areas, and the levels of activity in different areas? I think these same sorts of tools you can apply to cities and to businesses to understand how they work as information processing systems. Okay. So this is a simple example of information flow in a city, but a really interesting one. This is from a company called Uber, a taxi company. And so this is different areas of New York and Washington, D.C., showing the literal traffic flows, so the taxi traffic flows between different neighborhoods in these areas. But you start to get a sense of what neighborhoods are actually connected to each other, which neighborhoods are people traveling between on a consistent basis, on a day-to-day basis. So we think that you can provide lots of information layers like this on a city that would give you a lot of insight into how the city actually operates as an organism. All right. And another motivating reason for doing this is England in particular, we're really one big urban area here. We have a more dense urban trace than anywhere else in Europe. all of our, big cities, so the green space in between is not even really classified as a rural area in the way that the European Union looks at the rural areas. They're not far enough apart. So what I'm getting at is it's really important for us to understand how our cities work in order to make them more effective to create a better economy, to create a better society. All right. So what is Imagine Brighton specifically? What are we envisioning for it? So what it is now, it's a group of people that are very passionate about transforming Brighton into a better place to live. So into a city that enhances the lives of everyone that lives or visits here. So the slightly more concrete example of this, we're going to form a community interest corporation with this mission of making Brighton a better place to live through creative use of technology. And the creative is a very important part of that sentence. It's not just technology. We have a really strong creative community in Brighton, and we want to tap that creativity as much as possible. And the most concrete thing that we're going to do is what Sam was mentioning, what I've been mentioning. We're going to build, along with the University of Brighton and a few other partners, a city data platform to allow us to get an intuitive understanding of how the city actually works by, on the slightly more technical end, providing a rich set of APIs, so an application programming interface, to access its data and tools that make it easy to build other technologies on top of it. Okay? So I'll explore what this actually means. All right, so to come back to my 3 questions, the first thing we need to do, and we're in the process of doing this, is understanding, I'll get out of the way here, what Brighton actually is. What are all the different ways that we can look at the city, the different data lenses we can put on the city, all these different things. So the first thing for me, looking from a social media lens and just generally looking at the character of the city, we want to understand what people think the city is, what it might actually be that's different than what they think it is. And in particular, I collect every single piece of publicly available social media information on the city that's out there. It's about 350,000 pieces of text each month. So all the tweets, all the public Facebook posts, I'm looking at that to see how the city actually thinks about itself, how does it talk to itself. And so these kind of themes pop out of that sort of analysis. People coming from elsewhere into Brighton, they're talking about coming down for a hen or stag night, coming down to go to the beach, sunny day, coming down from London. So is it a seaside party town? Or is it an artist and student ghetto? Certainly we have a very large student population in Brighton with the University of Sussex and the University of Brighton there. There's a very large art community and a very active on social media art community as well. Is it a Regency heritage site? So in Hove, there's a strong tradition of protecting Regency buildings and within the central area as well. And there's a very politically active group that defends the heritage sites within Brighton. Or is it Silicon Beach? So as Sam was mentioning, we have a very dense population of little tech companies developing in Brighton now. So it's all 4 of these things really. And which of these 4 things matter? How do we get these different communities talking to each other? All right. So on a more sort of structural basis, what is Brighton? Is it the different neighborhoods, the different voting areas that make up the city? Is that what the character of the city is? So this is the last council election, red Labour, blue Tory, and green, of course. So we can look at all these different data layers to look at how the city is actually constructed. Or is it, is the transport network important to understanding the city? So this is the bus maps of the city. So we can pretty easily see all the public transport information about the city live. And this might be an interesting thing to do for the city, is to make that more accessible. So you could see where every single bus and every single train in the city is at any given time. And possibly, if we can get them on board, the taxis as well. So, yeah, that kind of thing. Is it the social media trace of the city that gives us information about what the city is up to? So these are the top tweeters in Brighton last week, I think. So is what Mr. Peter Andre says about Brighton, is that particularly important to the city? Does that sort of information matter? So these are your top male and top female tweeters in the city of Brighton. I think it was last week. Okay, what components and stakeholders are important to include? Whose data do we actually want to include, and who's going to facilitate us building this platform? So these are a few of the people that we've either already had direct contact with. So I had a very interesting conversation with the police, who are very excited about a platform like this for getting the message out about what they're doing in the community, and potentially for analyzing crime data as well. University of Brighton obviously is a major partner on this, and we can tap their resources to build components that will be necessary to make this a great platform. We've had a few conversations with the council about opening up their data sources, and so they have the problem of very limited resources to make their data available. And so we'd like to help them build more effective systems for communicating their data to the rest of the community. University of Sussex, Wired Sussex, who is a sponsor of the Brighton Fuse project, or one of the organizers of the Brighton Fuse project, that looked at the creative and technical community within Brighton and how big a player that is in the Brighton economy. So the technical sector and the creative technical sector together now almost equals the amount of tourist dollars that come into the city. It's only about 50 million behind, I think, now in terms of total pounds coming into the city. Okay, so then the really nitty-gritty work is digging in for all these different things I've talked about, and a few more of them, digging in to see what data actually exists about the city. And these are the sort of categories that we're looking at. So communications, social media, but also all of the news media in Brighton, all the local newspapers, the Argus, the Brighton Indy, what's being said there, how are people talking to each other within the city. Health information that's publicly available from the government, anything we can get on the state of health of the city as a whole. So policing, getting the neighborhood watch alerts from the police and making them much more accessible so you can see what's going on in the city. Transport, as I said, the buses and the trains, that data is publicly available. So you can see live information about that, but it's not really accessible in any form that we found yet. Education, what's the state of education in the city? Environment, economy, events, housing, waste management, of particular concern if you live in Brighton. You've probably have been following the issues over a long time, or not had your bins collected for several weeks. But there are good data sources on all of these, and so what the process we're going through now is actually reaching out to the different stakeholders that own those data sources, figuring out how much of a mess they are, and can we write systems to consume that data, and then write applications so the rest of us can then access it and allow people to develop more interesting tools on top of it. Okay, all right, so where do we actually want to go from here? This is a question that we intend to ask the city directly through social media and any other channel that we can use. So where is Brighton today? Where does it want to be in 5, 10, 15 years? And how can a data platform facilitate those sorts of decisions? All right, as an example, I don't know if you guys recognize the I-360, if you live there. If you live in Brighton, you probably do. So this is a major construction project going on the seafront. The council has given them, I think it's a £46 million loan to construct it. Very controversial in the city. And looking at the social media trace on something like this, it's really interesting to see that people are talking within little groups, but not to each other, particularly the politically opposed groups, to an event like this, to a public works projects like this. You know, people in Hove there's a particular group there that doesn't want to see it get constructed. Some other people very excited about seeing it. But I think one of the interesting things you might be able to do with a communications platform is get people talking to each other, really understand the issues that are driving political differences within the city, and potentially coming to a resolution. Okay. So a little bit, some of the other areas we're looking at. So the city problems are kind of low-hanging fruit for us. So parking is a major concern for the city, and low-hanging fruit in terms of there's not really a great way of looking at what's available in terms of parking in the city. So we could easily, by consuming the data about how many parking spaces are available in a given lot, we can give you a much easier way of finding that information out. If you're driving around, we could develop something that would allow you to see where the closest parking zone to you, where there's maybe a free spot available. So this stuff is fairly easy. Waste collection, if you've looked at the council website, it's not really great. If you want to figure out when your bins are going to be collected or to submit a report, there's some ways that you could easily make that a better experience for citizens in the city. Housing, what's available, what are the house prices going for, what's the rate of change, what neighborhood should you be looking at if you're looking to buy a house, that sort of thing. All right, so those are all fairly straightforward. Those are not hard problems, but they're not really being taken up by anybody because there might not be a specific commercial value to taking those problems up that a city data platform might be able to attack. The bigger vision, though, is can we really get at what the city wants to be? What are its hopes, dreams, and aspirations? If it wants to be Silicon Beach, what's the process for local government to invest in that? What's the process for businesses to invest in that, making that a reality? What are the effects of those investments going to be on the other systems in the city? Does it want to be an arts and design capital? Same sort of thing. Where do you need to make the investments? Does it want to be a green tourism destination, which has been a major plank of the city council? So for all of these sorts of decisions, how can we make all the information about the city visible to decision makers and make predictions on that data to make these sorts of dreams into realities? Okay. All right, so here's the concrete bit. I won't spend a lot of time on talking technical details on how we construct it. But so for all of these things I was talking about, how do we take all this data and then turn it into something that's actually useful? We've taken a look at a few different platforms that are out there. This is Moxie. This is Oxford City Data Platform. And this is interesting in terms of making data publicly available. So they already have a system set up where you can see all of the transport in the city in one application. You can see where every book and every library in the city of Oxford is at any given time if it's checked out. And library data is something we're also interested in. Here, all your weather conditions. So anything they can put into the system to make it readily accessible to you. And so this is an example of a really nice public-facing application that you can do with this sorts of data. The other one we've been taking a look at is Dublin. So this is Dublinked. So the previous one from a technical execution standpoint is really nice to look at, something that's actually been constructed and people are using. It's useful. The Dublinked one is a broader project in terms of organizing all the technical resources in Dublin. So they don't really have a data platform, a unified data platform as yet, but they have really strong will within the city to use data to innovate and to make the city better. So that the organization that's there is interesting for taking a look at. Okay, so what would we want a Brighton data platform to look at? So as I was mentioning with the problems, useful tools is the first thing we really want to consider. What do people really need to make their day-to-day life better in the city of Brighton? Is there data available that we can use to do that? That's where we'll start. Once we have a few of those applications in place, then we can start building roadmaps for a better data infrastructure within the city itself. How do we use data to drive the things that the city should be doing to make itself better? Just asking the question, what does Brighton want to be from a global perspective? The only time that question ever really gets asked is during political campaigns. If we ask people and we actually give them mechanisms for making their own city better through a data platform, what is the potential there? And that's the sort of question that we like to answer. Okay. And then so the long-term fantasy is that we actually create a data utility for the city. What this would be a platform that any business, any public service provider in the city, rather than building their own systems, they would use a common data utility to put data into and then make it easily accessible to people for pulling data back out of it. So this isn't just a public-facing application that you might have on your mobile phone to see where the transport is, but it would be something that you could build a business on top of. You could build a new product or service on top of this, or the city council could build a new product or service on top of a data utility. Okay. All right, so why should you guys care about any of this? I mean, what's really driving us is that Brighton is our hometown, and we want to make life better here. But we think that by making life better in Brighton, we could probably make it better in all the urban areas of England and Britain. So, you know, is the Gatwick Diamond the next target for rolling this out? We think, you know, Brighton has some unique things about it that will probably have to tweak the platform specifically for Brighton. But what works there will probably work in other areas as well. We'd like to create a center of excellence for data science in Brighton, and this is a nice project we've got going with the University of Brighton to make this happen. So my side job that I just recently gave up was teaching commercial data science. We want to get involved with developing the community in Brighton. So I think when I say we, both from the University of Brighton perspective, but also what we kind of jokingly refer to as the Brighton Technical Mafia, those people that are really good within Brighton at what they do, to create an other than London a center of excellence here for data science. Really, the center of gravity for most industries in the UK is London, of course, and there is a strong data science community there, but we think there's really room to create a second home for data science within Britain. So some of the other benefits we would see come out of a platform like this is that we're planning on open sourcing most of the tools that we produce. So companies like mine that are contributing to it, we have our commercial uses for those tools, but to the best of our ability, we're going to make those available to other people to develop platforms for other cities and to develop other products on top of. So creation of new products and markets, and attracting investment into the other than London Southeast corridor for making this happen. So if you want to get an investment for a small company, you have to go to London right now. They're not, the VC companies, venture capital companies, angel investors are not looking in the other than London spaces very much, and particularly not in this quarter very much. So letting people know that interesting things are happening down here is one of the goals of creating a data platform. Okay, and I'll stop there.